Hello, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining this session. I am Ramkumar Balasubramaniam, Head of Finance, Middle East at Barclays. Today, in the midst of the COVID 19 pandemic, finance is at the center of the institution, driving key decision making. Yes, it has a seat at the decision making table and an ability to chart the organization's future. But in the face of digitalization, finance is at the crossroads where it faces a pivotal moment, a carpe diem moment, one where it can seize the day and lead the organization forward or risk being left behind. How do we ensure, in the face of all these new buzzwords, algorithm, machine learning, robotics, and so on, that finance stays relevant in the future? How do we keep the function future proof? Let's discuss. We all have our views of the finance function, both working in finance and from outside looking in. Function which burns the midnight oil, a function which loves its month end, a function which helps demystify the numbers, helping making sense of the financial jargon to all non-financial people, or a function that at its core is the conscience keeper for the organization, keeping the wheels of the organization churning. Over the past 20 years, the function has certainly come a long way. From being a back office scorekeeper function, struggling with manual processes, incongruent data sets, poor systems, really struggling to get the financial position right, to actually running some sort of hindsight analysis, performance versus budget, variance versus plan, to running models for the business, supporting business cases as and when needed from the business, to actually becoming true business partners, helping make sense of all the trends behind the numbers, helping making sense to non-finance people, actually helping drive revenue growth, reduce costs, manage risk, and drive returns. Today, the function has a seat at the decision-making table with an ability to chart the organization's future. So for this function, which is ubiquitous or seemingly everywhere in any organization, be it big or small, what is there to fear? Let us look at an example from history. This bird, the dodo bird, was also seemingly everywhere in the 16th century in Mauritius. It was in its thousands and did not know any fear. Till, of course, the Dutch sailors landed on the island and they came with their animals, the dogs and rats from the ship, and the Dutch sailors loved the dodo's meat. And the dogs and the rats loved the dodo's eggs. Within no time, in a short span of 100 years, the dodo was extinct. Today, all that we know of the dodo is what we see on souvenirs in Mauritian shops, or as a symbol on the Mauritian rupee, or the Mauritian immigration stamp. So all fear is not bad. Finance is today faced with a myriad of problems. There's machine learning, there are algorithms, new structures, new business models, information needed right on time. There's financial close needed in real time. There's digitalization, and there are new business priorities coming up. A COVID-19 scenario is one such. Faced with all this, finance has to realize that what got it here won't get it there, as Malcolm Goldsmith said. And the first step in this is to recognize and wanting to change. Thankfully, finance teams want to change and have taken the first step. But the challenge for finance is very different. It is not to do more with less. It is to do better with less. How are finance teams faring in the face of this scenario? Well, according to a leading consultancy, 85% of all finance teams are actually undergoing transformation or planning finance transformation. But only 30% of finance transformation projects are delivering on the benefits. Why is this the case? The answer lies in three distinct things: planning, implementation, and all the critical factors to be considered. Let's see them. On a finance transformation journey, finance really needs to look inward, understand where it stands today versus various matrices, be it people, system, processes, or data sets. Given this, finance then needs to decide and build its own compelling vision, one that's aligned with the overall organization's vision, that's blessed by the CEO, so that it's completely aligned with the overall organization structure. Thirdly, finance needs to define what good looks like. This key attribute and characteristic definition is critical to this project. Done with this, we need an actionable roadmap and we need to consider our gaps with regard to all processes, be it talent, systems, and the stakeholder expectations. Finally, a very important aspect of this whole process is the unknowns. There could be two kinds of unknowns. There is the known unknown, an activity that finance has always known that it needs to do but has never done. So it's a known unknown. It could be implementing a core banking system. And there are the unknown unknowns. People or experts, only those who have been on this transformation journey actually know and can help guide so as to not repeat the same mistakes. So finance need to tap into experts to help them on this. When it comes to implementation, there are four things to consider. One size does not fit all. Different entities would have different legal structures, different geographic structures, or different core tech systems. Also, focus needs to be on quality, and cheap is not good. Align the priorities of the finance function and the strategy with the business priorities. Allocate the right resources for the right reasons of business growth. Challenge the status quo. And by this I mean we need to really challenge what is needed as an outcome. We need to shape the evolution of what the business needs and wants. It's something like what Steve Jobs said. You need to think of what the customer needs before they do. So finance needs to really challenge the status quo. And finally, stewardship, leaving something better than what it was before. Just satisfying the business need is not efficiency. Push to actually deliver outcomes which are beneficial to the overall organization. And the overarching principles. The biggest one, don't treat this as a cost reduction exercise. Treat finance as a profit center. That is the overarching principle of this whole project delivery. And then when you measure performance, measure it versus return on investment, not just cost saved. Similarly, on resource allocation, look at risk mitigated. Look at putting the resources where you'll get more return on investment. Again, avoid treating this as a cost to serve exercise. If this is done right, finance will continue to maintain its seat at the decision making table and actually be in a seemingly good position to take on digitalization. In digitalization, we have a proliferation of data. Look at what Deming said 100 years back. In God we trust, all others bring data. If only Deming were alive today. We have data coming out from seemingly everywhere. We have structured data, unstructured data, some data which can be displayed in sheets and columns that we're used to, some data which comes from images, files, videos, all sorts of emails, something which can be stored easily, something which cannot be stored easily. Faced with all this, finance is at a crossroads. Now finance cannot afford to dither. And this is the real pivotal and vital moment for finance. If it were to not embrace this change, in a short time, it can be overrun by digitalization. Let's look at a medium-term scenario, 3 years down the line. And finance sort of stays in the background and somebody else takes the lead on digitalization. What could happen to the finance team? Finance headcount could shrink significantly. Processes can be standardized and automated. Robotics can take over processes and run them efficiently. Finance could be left doing specialist activity, IFRS, tax, compliance, risk management, and so on. Processes that finance thinks are very close to it today, like the close, could be fully automated. IT could run the overall process. Decision making, because it comes from everywhere else, could be run by other functions which lead the analytics process. And operations can take over the core finance planning processes. Finance really needs to avoid this scenario where it becomes a very specialized center of excellence, providing support as and when needed. To avoid this scenario, finance needs to seize the day. When the opportunity is there, finance needs to seize the opportunity and really embrace digitalization. If it were to embrace digitalization, finance first has to get the culture of the organization right. There is no use embarking on a digitalization journey for any organization that does not embrace data driven decision making. It's futile. If finance leads the digitalization process, the whole scenario could be something different. Yes, headcount could reduce, but you can redeploy resources. Finance can chart trends, analyze digital trends, and actually develop the vision for the organization. The goal then, because finance is proactive, is that finance builds the common vision for the organization, identifies new opportunities, draws the roadmap, works with all functions, leads the analytics team, and drives decision making. Now finance does planning in real time and finance leads the organization forward. It is critical that finance embraces digitalization and actually leads the organization forward to chart its own course. Finance needs to adopt an agile operating model. How do we go about this? The finance organization needs to be focused entirely on the stakeholders' requirement, looking outward, not inward. The teams will be flat, almost like an IT bench where people can rotate in and out of high priority finance projects. Some small transaction teams to handle regular day-to-day activity. Project management teams, focused project management teams to deliver outcomes which are specific to the organization, and an entrepreneurial mindset to the overall process as to what is the outcome that we are looking for. Are we trying to do the best and questioning like a business outcome for every particular situation? Finance teams of the future will not have a finance planning analysis function, a financial control function, a product control function, a mid-office function, MI and stuff. It could be very different in the future. How could the roles change in the future? I think there will be a core role which will manage transactional processes, revenue management, daily transactions. These could form about 20% of the organization, which manage the core heart of finance process. Then we could have people I call specialists who would be in a center of excellence. You tap into them when you're looking for specialist information on taxation or IFRS 9 and so on. The IT bench I spoke of would be the problem solvers. People who rotate in and outside of projects who actually help solve current business problems. Finally, the most important person in this whole process is the value leader. Probably about 10% of all people in the organization. People who are able to synthesize all the finance information, try to make sense of all the numbers, and are actually able to address the most pressing overall organization priorities. People who can drive outcomes for the overall firm. This new structure is what is going to replace our traditional structure. Given all this, finance teams also have to model some behaviors. What are those? Finance teams need to look at what drives shareholder value. How do we drive the maximum value for the shareholder? Can we predict competition behavior? It's not only overseeing financial numbers and performance, it's about actually making actionable changes which drive outcomes. When it comes to digitalization, We have to manage stakeholders outside the formal hierarchy. We need to adopt a digital technology and help others see the benefit in adoption. Finance leaders need to walk the talk and reward the right behavior. If all of this is done, there is no doubt in my mind that we'll have a future proof finance function. One that is great again. Thank you. Now I'll take any questions.